Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first lecture under the title of International Lecture Series. So this is a new initiative that we have started at our college, and this is courtesy COVID. Okay, so till date, we would always have guest lectures, people who would walk in and share their experience in person. But because of the COVID situation, the online platform is the platform for communication. And that's what actually made me think that I could have international people coming in at their time points of convenience and sharing their experience, their technical, it could be anything. So we have a battery of sessions, and we probably would factor in one or two international sessions every month, okay, in addition to the national ones. So today, for the first time, we have Bhargavi Pandit, and she is our alumni. She did her B Pharm from our college, and she sat in the same 301 in her final year, okay, and she was the second last bencher, if I remember.
Yes. A lot of chalks came my way.
Yes. So she's doing exceptionally well, and the reason I thought of her is I was just going through LinkedIn, and her portfolio is very strong. And the other reason I chose Bhargavi was that what we think when you are students and we are teachers, it is only the academic expression that sets into the teacher. So if I have to think of Bhargavi is not an exceptionally academically strong person, okay, but she's done well, exceptionally well. So that, at the end of the day, it is those skills that matter. So I'm going to reiterate the fact that academic scores is good, but life is much more beyond academic scores, and that's how we at BNCP plan and work towards grooming everyone or all our students who walk out. So Bhargavi's got tremendous experience. So I'm just going to tell her bachelor's from BNCP and master's from Northeastern in regulatory affairs. And she's got diverse experience in different companies like you have Glaxo, GSK, and she's worked in Sun Pharmaceuticals, and she's also worked in, she's got a lot of leadership awards, and currently she's working in BOEHRINGER INGELHEIM, which is a very well known and very old company. It's German, right?
Yes, it's German. Yes.
It's a German company, and they are into many more sectors, API sector, finished products, and many more. So over to you, Bhargavi. A very warm welcome from our side. It's good to see you. I think I'm seeing Bhargavi after 2011.
Yes.
And it's good to see her, and most welcome, and let's have a nice session. So students, this is going to be an interactive session, as Bhargavi has already mentioned. So you can just shoot your questions as and when they come to you, or do you want them after the session, Bhargavi?
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tabassum ma'am. I will definitely love to keep this session interactive. I've been in many presentations that are very long and tedious. I do not want to bore the students. So please let's keep it very interactive. You can stop me at any time. You can challenge me at any time if you don't agree with me. Yes. This is absolutely going to be a very much interactive session. So thank you so much, ma'am, for this.
Great. Go ahead, Bhargavi.
I feel very humbled with this introduction, and yes, Tabassum ma'am correctly said, I did try my best. I was never the first or second ranker in the college, but I always thought, like Tabassum ma'am said, that if you don't excel in just one skill, you have so many others in your ability, in your power, that you can expand and use that to your advantage. So the topic of my presentation today is life begins at the edge of your comfort zone. And why I chose this topic is because this something resonates with me very dearly. I was just like you, sitting in that same classroom, sitting in the comfort of my home, thinking that that's how the real world is going to be. It's going to be all rosy and cakey. I am the only child for my parents, so that also completely changes the scenario because I've had everything that I asked for. But trust me, life is not like that. Life is going to throw you curveballs every single day, whether it be professionally or personally. I'm going to start with a really short story. So it was a sunny afternoon and I was standing at the edge of a boat. When I stared down, all I could see was the deep water of the sea. My instructor was harnessing me with oxygen cylinders, and all that weight was dragging me down. I was shaking so much, I thought I'm not going to breathe. That was my first scuba diving experience. I had trained for a couple of days with him, but when the moment came that I had to jump off the boat, a voice ran in my head that said, "You cannot do this. This is insane." So I turned back to my instructor and told him, "You know what? I want to quit. I cannot do this." But right when I turned, I saw this quote written on the side of a boat. And that said, "Life begins at the edge of your comfort zone." Something happened to me when I read that. Something supernatural happened to me. I took 2 minutes to myself. I turned back and I jumped off. And when I jumped off, I realized the 5 seconds where I was having that free fall before hitting the ground on the sea, it's not as scary as it looks. When I was standing on top of that boat, I thought I was never going to be able to do this. But I went down, and when I saw that fish go right past me, I thought, this is great. If I had not overcome my fear, I would never be able to experience such a beautiful natural world that God created for us. That was my first lesson, that I really have to push myself out of the comfort zone. The first time when I pushed out of myself out of my comfort zone was moving from BNCP, graduating with my bachelor's in pharmacy, moving continents, and coming to the United States of America. And I will come to the fact, how I decided to do this, how I chose to be where I am. But this is just a little bit of introduction about myself. So when I decided to move across continents, I came for my master's in regulatory affairs at Northeastern University in Boston. And I will also give you a little glimpse on why I chose Northeastern University, because I'm sure a lot of people know that there are so many universities in the US. How do you make a decision, etc. My second point where I had to push myself out of my comfort zone was getting my first internship experience at GSK. Having no training, having no industry experience, because I came straight from a pharmacy school into my master's and my graduate program, it was extremely difficult to convince someone that I am capable to work in an industry. I am capable to learn something new, especially when you are working in a big pharma, in a big corporate, where there is so much of onus on each and every employee working there. So that was my first getting out of the comfort zone to really get that first internship. And after that is all history. So a little overview on my career path. While I was in Northeastern, I had my first internship for 3 months at GlaxoSmithKline. I was in their quality assurance and regulatory affairs team. I was working on APIs at that time. It was a tremendous experience. That just opened up a whole new world of pharma to me, a whole new world of regulatory. All of us study the same courses. All of us have the same teachers. But we have to identify within ourselves, what is that one little niche that we have that we can carry forward? And that was the first step when I came into GSK, and I learned a little more practically about regulatory affairs on what I wanted to do further. That was my first step when I was trying to find my purpose. My second internship, as again part of my master's program, was at Sanofi Genzyme. So I was in a part of the unit of Sanofi where they were only working on rare diseases. Now, rare diseases are diseases that are not highly or heavily prevalent. Like you might have heard people with lung cancer, colon cancer, all these are not rare. They are not small. So working on rare diseases is very different because you require a very different mindset. You require a very different regulatory strategy for it. So that was my second experience. After I graduated, I moved on to a completely different side of pharma. Again, for the third time, pushing myself out of the comfort zone, is working in a generic industry. Now, we all know that India is one of the leading generic industries in the world. And I worked at Sun Pharma in their US branch. They were actually trying to set up their US team at that time. So I had the opportunity to join their team as a fresh graduate, not knowing anything about generics, and trying to get their department up and running with all the senior leaders who have much more experience than me. That was my third time pushing myself out of the comfort zone. After that, I didn't stop. I moved on to GSK, where I did not work on generics. After gaining 3 years of experience in generics, I thought, you know what? I don't want to become comfortable. I hate becoming comfortable. That's one thing about me. So I again pushed myself out of the comfort zone and I went to GSK to work on two completely different portfolios that I never worked on from a regulatory strategy point of view. One is the gastrointestinal portfolio that worked on diseases like hyperreflex acidity, IBD, IBS. So completely different realm of understanding how the regulatory strategy is going to be, what the product is going to look like, what the mechanism of action is, what the label is going to look like. And then also worked on the respiratory portfolio for allergies and working on steroidal nasal sprays. Again, very different, completely different regulatory strategy. Just 2 years ago, I realized that I do have a passion that I had still not gotten there yet, because yes, I wanted to always work in oncology. I always wanted to work in the area where I could give back to the society in terms of cancer, because cancer is one disease that, we still haven't found the cure. The treatments are still advancing. And I thought, being a pharmacist, I'm not working in a hospital. I'm not doing what a regular pharmacist is supposed to do. So I really want to give back to the society. And that was my purpose. That was my passion that I always had. I didn't get the chance to start off in cancer as my passion, but I knew that I had to land up in that cancer field one way or the other. So right now I'm working in Boehringer Ingelheim. It's a German company, but I work on their US side. I work very closely with the FDA to work on their oncology and immuno-oncology drugs. I'm an associate director. I am also the US lead. So I lead all the projects in terms of the US market, where I have to work very, very closely with my internal team that is made up of scientists, statisticians, mathematicians, my physicians, clinicians, to come up with a strategy where we have this very, very novel drug, and how do we place that in the market? What are the clinical trials that are required? How many patients are required? What are going to be our endpoints to clearly identify the mechanism of action of the drug? And once I do that, I work very closely with the FDA, which is a health authority, Food Drug Administration in the United States, that really approves that drug so that it's available to all the patients in the market. And please note that cancer drugs do take time to come into the market, so you require a lot of patience, you require a lot of passion to move forward when you're working in a field like this. I am working on a couple of other things, which I'm going to park for now, and I will come back to it later in my presentation. As you see on my left side, I've also had a RAC certification, which is a Regulatory Affairs certification. I will also talk about this a little more later down in the presentation when I'm talking more about regulatory affairs and what are the other things that you can do apart from just doing a master's. All right. So one of the very common questions that I get is, how did you choose to be where you are? I did not dream of it. No one came into my dream telling me that you should do this. Neither I went to a magician and that picked out a career option from the hat. I too, just like you guys, or probably you guys are better than me, but I was also very confused in what I wanted to do. I had a strong liking for pharmaceutics, honestly, when I was in pharmacy. I used to love studying pharmaceutics. So I always thought that, you know what, I'm going to do something in pharmaceutics. Maybe I'll do research in pharmaceutics. I'll do a PhD in pharmaceutics. But a little down the line, I also knew myself, and maybe my professors can attest to it, I was not great in practicals. So if I started to work on research, I know that I would have to dedicate all my life being in a lab. Now I have to understand what my strengths and weaknesses were. I knew that my weakness was, first, I do not have that much patience to work in a lab. It requires tremendous amount of patience to be in a lab, to focus, to work in a setting where all you can think of is you and your project. I am a very social person. I love making new friends. I love meeting new people. I love networking. I love connecting. So the idea of me sitting in a lab all by myself did not sit well with me. The second thing I had to imagine was what my strength was, because like I mentioned, all of us study the same program, all of us graduate with the same degree, but how do you stand apart from others? That's where you use your strength. And somewhere I knew that I love talking to people. And when I see myself as a people person, I could think of different options like marketing. I could think of options where I can do regulatory affairs or quality assurance. How did I know about regulatory affairs? Because I learned from my surroundings. Exactly like I have the opportunity to talk to you guys. We had some seniors who had graduated from BNCP before me, and they were actually doing their masters in regulatory affairs in the US. At that time, I thought that why not I also try some other countries, but unfortunately, when I was graduating, regulatory affairs was not such a big thing. I mean, right now, you even have schools in India that have regulatory affairs. You have schools in Europe, Australia, Canada, so many. But when I graduated, my choice was really limited. So I could only think in terms of regulatory affairs being in the US. Um, the very first thing when I thought about regulatory affairs, and when you are sitting in a classroom not knowing what regulatory affairs is, and all you know is, okay, you have to work with the FDA, that's just a tiny bit of it. What helped me was I went online, I just typed a job for regulatory affairs, and I got a job description. So what the job description does is, in the US, it's divided into two very clear parts. One is your technical qualifications that talks about what degree you should have, what experience you should have, how many years of experience you should have. So very technical, very standard. If you meet that criteria, check number one, you're done. But what really interested me was the second part of the job description for regulatory affairs, which was having that extra interpersonal skill. So when I read the job description, I thought, okay, if I have enough experience, maybe I can qualify for this job. But how do I stand out from all the other 10,000 applicants? And that's when I saw that those interpersonal skills aligned with my strengths. You have to be an excellent oral and written communicator, because you are negotiating with health authorities, you're negotiating with people who are much more senior, you are leading your team basically and influencing them without being very authoritative. You have to have excellent interpersonal and communication skills. And that was my aha moment. That's when I thought, yes, this is exactly what I was looking for. Something that could connect me to the science, because if I am in marketing, I feel I move a little further away from science, and I love science. So something that can connect me to the science, but something that's not going to have me end up sitting in a lab, because I am not that person. That's when I decided I want to be in regulatory affairs. Again, having a very limited knowledge, I didn't know what was lying ahead of me, but I think in a way, the leap of faith that I took, that little voice in my head coming back, it's not going to be as scary as it looks, really worked for me. In terms of choosing university, I don't know how many of you guys have already chosen universities, or how many of you are in the process. Again, I'm not trying to diminish any university that you have chosen. They're all great in the US. Trust me, every university has excellent standards of education here. But the reason why I chose Northeastern is actually for three reasons. The first reason, I did have to think in terms of the location. So in the United States, US is very, very large. It's not where you can move very easily from one state to another. So I wanted to be in a location that actually has a lot of pharmaceutical industries around it. Because if I'm sitting in Texas, which is way down south, and all my pharmaceutical industries are way up north in Boston, it's going to be very hard for me to convince someone to relocate me for a job. So I wanted to make sure that I am surrounded by pharmaceutical industries where it'll be easy for me to apply, easy for me to be local, rather than crossing that one more hurdle of not being local and having to be relocated. Because trust me, nowadays relocation is becoming an issue for companies in the United States. They do not want to easily relocate people, especially now when you think about COVID. You might be working from home right now, but later down the line, you will have to go and work in some other office. It's not going to be that easy. So my first thing was my location. The second was when I looked at Northeastern's program and when I compared it to other universities like Johns Hopkins Institute, Temple University in Philadelphia, Keck Graduate Institute in California, Northeastern had this amazing program where it offered me 9 months of internship as part of my master's program. So that was a huge advantage for me at that time, because remember, I just graduated out of pharmacy and went directly into my master's program. I had had no prior industry experience. So that would be a great opportunity for me to really apply for internships and get that industry experience, because I knew that once I graduated, having that industry internship experience is going to give me that extra edge that I was looking for. And that was extremely important because I learned so much. The second was, people in the US, they do really value experience, whether you bring that experience from another country working in an industry or whether you bring that experience out of internship. So I knew that I really wanted to focus on that internship part because I had no prior experience working before my master's. And the third was, and this may or may not sound silly, but financial burden. You have to understand that it's a huge financial burden when you come to the US. First, you are already converting rupees into dollars. Second, you are going to live in the US for 2 years. If you get an on-campus job, that's great because you can support yourself. But always think about the worst, that you're not going to probably find an on-campus job that easily. So either you, by taking a loan, or your family will have to support you. I did not want to land up in a situation where I complete my master's with hundreds and $1,000 loan, because even after I get my first job, I would eventually be only paying back my loan and my debt. The situation right now has become more volatile in terms of jobs, in terms of the economy. So definitely, please do think about the financial burden that you will incur after 2 years. So that was my third point why I chose Northeastern over some other universities in California or Washington, D.C. that might have made my standard of living a little more expensive. And then I took a leap of faith. Of course, you have to take a leap of faith. You're not going to realize everything in the first shot. And it's okay, because even if you fail, it's fine. You're still going to learn from it. So you will have options to look forward to. You will learn from this experience. Luckily, my leap of faith with a lot of hard work worked for me, but just go for it. It's really not as scary as it looks like. I want to stop here and see if anyone has any questions, if anyone wants to share any of their stories where they took a leap of faith and that worked for them. Anything that you guys want to ask or say? No questions? I was that good? Okay. All right. Next, I'm going to be talking a little about breaking stereotypes. And I know Tabassum ma'am mentioned that, you guys are going to have more international speakers who are in different fields than what I am doing, which is great because trust me, you definitely with pharmacy want to break stereotypes. Pharmacists are right now, I can say from a pharmaceutical industry standpoint, really leading the game because we are so diverse. We are so multifunctional in the areas that we have studied that we can apply it anywhere and everywhere we want. So in terms of breaking stereotypes, I'm in regulatory affairs. I'm going to mostly in my presentation talk about regulatory affairs, but you can do so much more than that. You can be a PharmD, you can be a registered doctorate of pharmacy in the US. I know you can be a PharmD in India as well. The advantage of being a PharmD in the US, as I can tell you, is that you first become a registered pharmacist. So you can do a lot of retail work, you can go into the hospital, you can also take up a specialization, for example, surgery, and you can actually be with the doctors in the hospital during the time of surgery. You can do marketing, and I know Jina is going to talk more about marketing. You can do research. Jimita can talk more about research. She's in that. Or you can be a lecturer, like one of our wonderful professors we have here. I never had the patience of doing that. I mean, if people ask me the same question twice, I still get annoyed. So I don't think I could ever be a lecturer, but that's definitely an option too. So think about pharmacy being a knowledge that you can translate into so many sectors and definitely break stereotypes. I'm sure there are so many other avenues that you can use. And don't think about if you choose one aspect right now, you cannot move to the other. Just think about this circle as one. It keeps moving. You can mix and match. I can do regulatory affairs, but you know what? In 3 years, I don't like it. I can easily switch to marketing, or I can do research and I can move into regulatory affairs. So give yourself that capacity, give yourself that chance to move and get out of your comfort zone. Don't think that if I choose a career right now, that's all I have to stick with. No, that's absolutely not true. And especially in the US, you see people moving all the time. You see people moving from one department to another. And everyone has started recognizing that there are so many skills that you bring in when you move from one department to another. It's just on you to make sure how you sell that for yourself. So absolutely, you can pick one, do another, land up in a third. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do eventually in my career, but definitely take risks, take smart risks, take calculated risks. All right, so talking about regulatory affairs as a career option, when we talk about regulatory affairs, or at least when I started in regulatory, I did not know there were so many different sectors of pharma, so many branches within regulatory affairs that you can actually choose your career to be off in the end. So I'm going to start with talking about different pharma sectors in the US first, and then I will move on to the different branches of regulatory affairs, because it's huge. You cannot just label regulatory affairs as one department. There are so many sisters under this regulatory family. So talking about different pharma sectors, and this was another plus point on why I chose Northeastern, was because if you look at Northeastern's program, it's called Masters in Regulatory Affairs in Drugs, Medical Devices, and Biologics. So these are the three main pharma sectors, especially in the US. And if my program is giving me a breadth of knowledge of all these three sectors, what's that doing is it's opening me up to apply to different industries after I graduate, because I have a theoretical and working knowledge of all these three different sectors. So like I mentioned when I started with generics first, generics were so new to me. I hope people know what generics are. They are not innovator drugs, but they are drugs where, the patent of the innovator drug expires, and then you can use the same formulation and create that medicine without having to do the traditional clinical trials, which is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and you can price your generic at a lower point. So it's for the benefit of the public. There is a lot of competition in the generic market itself. The regulatory environment of generics, especially, and I'm talking this in terms of US, is very, very different. You require a very, very deep understanding of CMC, which is chemistry, manufacturing, and controls. To understand the regulatory pathway, you have to understand the science behind it. If you don't understand how the drug works, as a regulatory professional, how are you going to explain it to outsiders? How are you going to explain it to FDA? How are you going to explain it to your consumers? So you have to have a very, very deep understanding of CMC, strong pharmaceutics knowledge for generics. So if someone is very interested in moving into a pharmaceutics field, but is not very interested in moving to a lab, you can always work in a generic industry. You will get to work very hands-on with all the scientists, understand the manufacturing side of the molecule, the chemistry side, and then present your strategy to the health authorities. And this was my first experience at Sun Pharma. And like I mentioned, my passion was oncology, which I am only doing for the last 2 years. I've been in regulatory for 8 years. So for the first 6 years, I did not get to fulfill my passion, but I do not regret it at all, because I learned so much out of working in generics. I learned the CMC aspects to the T, that I can, not even being in that department right now, still talk to my colleagues and apply my knowledge. So again, like I said, nothing is a waste. Everything is going to be a learning for you. And this may sound extremely philosophical right now, but trust me, I have been through this. I can tell you from my experience that the more diverse experience you have, the more niche you can create for yourself. The second one is the branded medicines. So branded medicines are the ones that are created by the innovator companies. They are completely new molecules. You have never heard of those molecules any time before. And they follow a long and tedious approval cycles. You have to have extensive clinical trials, a lot of patients. You have to work very closely with the health authorities, and you have to have an extremely strong pharmacology knowledge. Why? Because it's a novel drug. So you have to really understand what is the mechanism of action, how is that mechanism of action going to translate into some other adverse events, how are we going to use that molecule. So when you talk to FDA or external agencies, you have to have a thorough understanding of the pharmacology. So people who are a lot interested in pharmacology can definitely move on to the branded side of drugs. I am in cancer research right now, which of course falls under this realm. The cancer research in the US has advanced tremendously, and sometimes just keeping up with the new regulations is tough. It's a task, but that's what excites me. That I am not comfortable in just knowing what I know, but I am going to push boundaries every single day to learn something new. So I find this field very, very exciting, very, very novel. I have also worked on the consumer side when I was at GSK. Now, consumer medicines in the US are not prescription medicines. Like your toothpaste is actually a drug in the US, and that has to follow a completely different set of regulatory pathway. So this is also very interesting because from a regulatory standpoint, when you are really promoting or when you see advertisements of drugs, that's where your regulatory knowledge comes into picture. What you can say, what you cannot say, all of that really forms the basis of a consumer product. Consumer industry is very, very fast paced. It is very, very dynamic. It's going to keep you on your feet, but you're also going to learn a lot. So if you think that you want to start your career with something simpler in regulatory affairs first and then move on to the more complex prescription medicines, you can always start with consumer. It's going to give you a lot of fast experience that may take a little time if you are in the prescription side, just because the clinical trials take longer. The last sector is medical devices, and medical devices are completely different from drugs because they don't have any chemical entities. They don't act by those regular pharmacological actions. So you have to have a very strong biomedical engineering background as well, knowledge as well. Now, luckily in pharmacy, we study all of this. And that's why I say we have this really nice trump card of being a pharmacist, because we've studied so many different aspects of the drug that we can apply anything anywhere. This is a very different side of the industry. It's a completely new regulatory strategy. It focuses on the actual mechanism, the actual device that you're using, like a pacemaker when you put into your heart, as opposed to a pill that you pop. So that's also a very different side of the industry. I've had a little experience working with medical devices right now with cancer, because cancer drugs in the US, you also supplement it with some devices for treatment. So this is very interesting. This is very new, and this is very, very upcoming in the US. If you plan to come to the US and do regulatory affairs, you will have tremendous opportunities to work in medical device companies because there are so many of them upcoming. A lot of people want to avoid the side effect of drugs, because when you have a drug, you will have some adverse events. Medical devices, that may come down a little because there are no chemicals in it. So a lot of people are also pushing towards that phase of medical devices. Again, very interesting, very different. So I think you have a lot of choices when you think about it. And either way, when you choose one, like you have seen me do, you can always move around. You can always push your boundaries and go into another field as well. Okay, so I know everyone just talks about regulatory affairs, but trust me, there is so many different branches under them, and I've had the opportunity to work in some of them and then transition and move along to others. So what I'm working on right now, that I said on cancer medicines, is called regulatory strategy. So strategy is where, like the name says, strategizing. You are strategizing on how the molecule that scientist has developed, how are you going to put it into a formulation, how are you going to conduct your clinical trials, and then how are you going to get it approved by the health agency that is in your country. Now you have to work very, very closely here with your scientists, with your doctors, with your statisticians, with your mathematicians, with your clinical operations. So this is where I found my niche. Because remember, I told you, I love working with people. I love networking with people. So that's what I thought, yes, this is where I can use my niche because I have to liaison not only with FDA right now, but also internally with people. So I love coming up with new strategies. I love being creative, and that's why I'm in regulatory strategy right now. But mind you, I never started in regulatory strategy. If you look at my career, I started in Sun Pharma, which is a generics industry. So I started with this box right here, regulatory CMC. I was only working on generics. I was only working on the chemistry, manufacturing, and control. And I did not really think about strategy because for generics, there is no strategy. The drug is already approved in the market. All you have to do is reverse engineer it. So you may ask, how did I move from this to that? And that's exactly what I call pushing the boundaries. Because you have a pharmacy degree, you can always convince people that you have the understanding, you have what it takes, along with your master's in regulatory affairs, to move fields. And that's the selling point. That's the branding yourself that it takes that, yes, I have the niche, I have the caliber, I have the flexibility to move from one area to another. If you give me a chance, I'm going to be I'm confident that you're going to really appreciate my work. So when I was planning to move from the generic industry into a brand, it was not easy. It took me 1.5 years of trying every single day and not giving up, of applying for probably 200 or 300 jobs, getting 150 rejections, almost clearing to the second or third round of interview and then not getting that job. But what I thought to myself was, if I am so passionate about this, I know someone will realize my passion. Because if I give up, then how do I expect them to not give up on me? So it did take a very, very long time, but I kept trying. And after I tried, I got into GSK. And after I got into GSK, the same pattern repeated because my passion is oncology and I was still not doing oncology in GSK. So when I had to move from GSK to my current company, now I could use my branding. Now I could show my current company with an example that, look, I had the caliber to move from one branch to another. So why will not I succeed moving from a respiratory portfolio to an oncology portfolio? It's not rocket science. I'm a pharmacist. I understand how drugs work and I can do it. The other branch is regulatory operations. So, when you're having all this data collected, when you have all your clinical trials done, you just cannot email the data to FDA, right? You have to submit it in a proper format. It has to follow some compliance rules. So our team of regulatory operations people really work with those electronic softwares that are given to us by the health authorities and make sure that our data is submitted properly. So that is another branch that you can work for. Regulatory labeling, we all know about labels. We read those big labels that come with drugs and they're not just gibberish. It takes a lot of time to come up with a label, especially for labels that you are working in a brand or an innovative drug where you have no idea, you have no precedence on what the label is going to look like. So it's a lot of effort. You work very closely with FDA and you create a label. So that's another aspect that you can go for within regulatory labeling. And the last one is regulatory intelligence. And this is a very, very new and upcoming field within regulatory. So as you know that a lot of countries are coming up now, they are emerging to have new policies. India has its own regulatory body that you can get drugs approved. US has its own, Europe has its own, Brazil, China, Japan, all of them have their own regulatory bodies. So how do they decide on what is required for a drug to get approved and what's not? That is through by developing policies. So you can actually be in a department within regulatory that actually influences the policies of these countries, of these emerging countries. It's a very, very new and upcoming field. We, in BI as well, we just have started this regulatory intelligence department last year. It's very interesting because every time a new policy comes up, a new guidance comes up, because you are a pharmacist, because you understand now the regulatory side of the business, because you've done a master's in regulatory affairs, you realize that you can start working on the policies with these influencing health authorities. So these are the branches in a nutshell. Honestly, when I came into regulatory affairs, I never knew that there were so many. I just started working in a generic industry, and that's when I realized, oh, I'm part of the CMC team. But I hope that this helps you. And as you move along in your career and as you know what you want, you can slowly decide your path, which way you want to go and what you want to do. Like I said, with the pharma sectors, again, you can move along any of these as and when you want. It's just going to add up to your credibility, add up to your knowledge. It's not that you're going to be stuck in a box. Please do not get stuck in a box. I really encourage even my interns that I mentor now in my company that learn and try to learn something new, because you never know what opportunity will help you win. So this is regulatory affair branches in a nutshell. Tabassum ma'am, Vasanti ma'am, I just want to make sure that no one has any questions, if or if anyone wants to ask anything regarding my experience.
Anyone has any questions?
Ma'am, I had a question.
Sure.
Yeah, my question was that how is regulatory intelligence different compared to health policy making? Something in that
Sure.
way.
Yeah, that's a great question. So regulatory intelligence works on the regulation side. So what happens is health policies work on a factor where you're thinking, of course, you're thinking in terms of patients within regulatory as well. But in health policy, you're also thinking in terms of how the drug is going to be accessed by the patient, how is the drug pricing going to be negotiated, what is the health environment of that country. But in regulatory intelligence, you're actually working one step ahead. When, for example, right now in India, for cancer, you only have chemotherapy. You don't have a lot of other options. But when you look at United States, there are so many other options in terms of cancer treatments. You have anti-PD-1s, you have targeted therapies. So if India is deciding that it wants to bring all of these drugs into their market, first they need to have a regulatory pathway or a policy to develop, so that the companies in India can then use that to conduct their clinical trials. So if you are in regulatory intelligence, you're actually sitting on a board and you're influencing the health authorities based on your knowledge, probably from other countries that you have gained, or by studying regulatory affairs, that in other countries X, Y, and Z worked for them. However, in our country, the patient population is a little different. So for our policy, we should have X, Y, and Z listed in the clinical trial. If you're sitting on the health policy side, then what you would say is the regulations are all done, they're all created. From the health policy side, you would say, you know what, in the US, this is priced at $10,000. India is an upcoming developing economy. We cannot charge that much. So based on the per capita income, you would charge this. This is how the market would get access to the drug. So they are tackling this drug access, but from two different sides. Does that answer your question? Like, does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anyone, anything else before I move on? No? Okay. We'll still have time in the end. If you're still thinking about your questions, that's fine. All right, so I know I'm talking a lot about US because that's the career path that I chose. I've only been in the US. I have not worked anywhere else. I mean, I have worked on different markets, but I've only been sitting in the US and doing that. So I do want to mention that your options are not limited, and I think you guys already know that, because when I was doing that, I felt so confused. I was not sure what I wanted to do. But when I was looking at these different options, I realized that there is so much of overlap. Like if you look at US, UK, Canada, Australia, Europe, you can actually see that GRE, TOEFL, IELTS, which is TOEFL and IELTS are your English speaking exams, and GRE is of course your technical exam. So if you don't know where you want to go yet, but you know that you want to go somewhere outside of India to study, just give your GRE and TOEFL, because what that will give you is it's going to give you that edge that you can apply in the US, you can apply in Canada, you can apply in Australia, because all of these places take GRE. TOEFL you would have to give anyways, because that's a standard test that anyone has to give that is traditionally not classified as an English speaking country. So, TOEFL is easy. We all communicate in English. Sometimes I just feel it's stupid, but you have to give TOEFL. So, that's going to be easy for you guys. Nothing to worry about. It's just a simple test. You just have to listen, read, and write in English, and that's it. We pretty much do that every single day. So I would suggest that your options are not limited. So if you are thinking about regulatory affairs and you're not sure yet because of so many factors, and one factor is, which I will touch base at the end, is the immigration in the US. The immigration in the US is not easy. I am living in the US for the past 9 years, and I'm still on visa. And trust me, it scares me every single day on what's going to happen. So if you are thinking that you want to go abroad, but you're not sure with everything that's happening in the US or with the COVID situation, you still give your GRE and then apply to Canada, apply to Australia, apply to UK. And then once you have those acceptances back, you can think about what's going to work for you. And remember, like how I made a cheat sheet or checklist on, okay, if I'm going to the US, I'm going to require X amount of dollars. I'm going to require immigration status XYZ. I would suggest make a checklist like that, make like a cheat sheet. So that way you can keep referring back to, if you get an acceptance from US, how does that fit like? If you get an acceptance from Canada, how does that fit like? Canada is also a very, very upcoming market. I do have to say that a lot of our seniors, a lot of my classmates have also gone to Canada. The immigration system is much easier than the US. Northeastern has actually also opened their first Canadian campus in Toronto for regulatory affairs. So Canada, again, I would say is an excellent option, excellent choice. It provides you the exact same North American lifestyle. The opportunities are upcoming in Canada. I would say the opportunities in the US have already been developed. So there is a lot more scope where you can move around, where you can try different things, but Canada also is very, very upcoming. So think about your options not being limited. And if you give those two exams, GRE and TOEFL, you already know you have opened yourself up to different options in the world. And in India, I know a couple of my friends who did GPAT, who are working in the medical and clinical department right now after their MPharm. I also know a couple of people who have given their NAPLEX in India and actually have done PharmD in India. You can get your credits from your bachelor's transferred into the PharmD program, so you don't have to study for 6 years again. I know that can be a lot, but you get a doctorate degree in pharmacy, and again, you can utilize that in many more ways, like either being on the medical side, on the clinical side, on the research side. So I feel that right now where you guys are at is at such a good place because your options are not limited. So don't be afraid of trying it and just say, oh, because that person did that, I'm also going to do that because I know how that is going to work. If you want to create your niche, this is the chance. Do something different. Try something different. I'm just going to move over miscellaneous career options. I know individual people are going to talk about this, but most of the times I hear from my nieces and nephews right now, oh, this is COVID, Corona, pandemic, this has just ruined our life. We cannot travel. So many people who wanted to come to the US, Europe to study now are stuck because they cannot travel. What I always tell them, and I will tell you guys, is think about it from the other side. The virtual world is now your oyster. Like exactly what Tabassum ma'am said before, that initially you guys used to have national speakers that used to come in, but she thought outside the box too, right? She thought about, okay, you know what? Now that we are all online, why don't we get people who are sitting in a different continent but can also share their experience? That is such an amazing spot to be in. Think about it. You don't even have to invest thousands of dollars coming to the US first, do a master's in regulatory affairs program because you are not sure whether you want to do it. You are not sure whether you want to invest that money. But you know what you can do? You can do a RAC. A RAC is a regulatory affairs certification. So if you go to www.raps.com, which is Regulatory Affairs Professional Society, and this is exactly what I did. Remember at the starting of my presentation, I'll tell you about RAC. This is exactly it. So RAC is a certification where it helps people who are in different areas right now, like people who are in research, people who are in manufacturing, who want to enter the field of regulatory affairs. But they want to enter the field of regulatory affairs a little faster. They don't want to invest 2 years of their time going back to school just because they've had so much of pharmaceutical experience. But you can actually use this to your advantage. So maybe in between now and the time that you decide you want to apply or you want to give your GRE, or maybe if you even want to take a 1-year break, because I'm sure you guys are studying hard, you can take the RAC exam. So RAC comprises of a 3-month training. So you will get an online book for RAC where you can study the book. It will give you a very fantastic, deep understanding of regulatory affairs. I took the RAC because I wanted to convince my employer that when I was moving from Sun Pharma to GSK, I could learn something new very fast. And that actually helped me. You know, in some of the job descriptions in the US, you will actually see it says RAC preferred. So people actually prefer that you have this certification because it shows that you have gone that extra mile, you have studied that course material, and you have earned your certification. So you actually can do that right now, because you might have some time in hand or you may not want to invest into a university given the current situation. So go online, visit www.raps.com. The book and the exam will probably in total cost you $500, which is, trust me, very little than $50,000 that you would probably pay for a master's program. And you can earn the certification. And when you earn the certification, it is not only used in India because it is highly regarded in India in regulatory affairs, but if you then decide to come to the US for another program, that is going to be your extra edge over the other people who are just doing the same thing as everyone else in the world. So think about the virtual world being your oyster. Don't take it in a negative way. If you have lemons, make lemonade out of it. The other very interesting program, and the question that came up earlier regarding regulatory intelligence, Northwestern University has started a program called Masters in Regulatory Law. If you are planning to go into a regulatory intelligence program, you can study regulatory law from Northwestern University. They also have started offering online courses and a little bit of classes to give a preview of what it would look like in the real world. So go online, sign up for it, take 1 or 2 of their free courses, see how you feel about it. And then you can decide whether you want to invest your money into doing a master's or not. Similar things happen for an MBA program too. So like I mentioned, and I'm going to quickly jump back to my slides when I'm talking about MBA, I'm still finding my passion. I'm still understanding what I want to do in the future. So before I invested into an MBA school, because an MBA school is extremely expensive in the US, I decided I want to also have a preview. I have never done MBA in my life. I've always been in a very, very technical side of things. So I decided I'm going to take a certification online course from Harvard Business School. And this, mind you, is open to the entire world. I had students from Russia, from China, from India. Everyone take this certification program. This was an 8-week certification program from Harvard Business School. You can Google it. It's called HBX Online. And it has different courses. So what I did was I took a course that is Introduction to Business Management, because I knew nothing about MBA. I did not want to just go to a school to be blindsided and now think, oh, I have enrolled myself into this 2-year program, but you know what? I hate it. I don't want to do it. And you don't want to quit at that time because you've made the commitment. So I took this pre-MBA certification program and it helped me tremendously. It helped me understand what my short-term goal is going to be and what my long-term goal is going to be. After doing this program, I realized that I do not want to do MBA at this point of time. And I probably wouldn't have realized it if I took an admission in an MBA school and committed myself for 2 years. Instead, what I did was I used this certification as a little bait to do a small rotation program in my current job. Point number 5, pushing yourself out of the box and pushing your boundaries. Because I knew that I had done a little bit of management course, through a networking program in my company, I built a very, very strong connection with the marketing head of my company, who is working on a diabetes brand right now. And I told him, look, I'm going to be very transparent. I do have a goal in the future that I want to do MBA. I took this pre-MBA certification course. I just want to see how it translates into the real world before I invest my time, energy, and money into an MBA program. I also told him, because I knew that he was a little short-staffed at that time, to make it a win-win situation, I told him, I will learn out of your colleagues and under your supervision, but this will also give you that additional headcount till you hire someone else. So that became a win-win situation. And 10% of my time right now that I'm saving on traveling, because I'm not going to work because of COVID, I am utilizing on this brand rotation franchise marketing. So there are so many ways you can do so many things. And if I eventually start enjoying what I do, then I can think about enrolling myself into an MBA school. Yes, I have 8 years of regulatory experience, but why can't I do MBA? It's not rocket science. We can all do everything. So that's what I would say, that take the virtual world as your oyster. It's really amazing if you look at the positive side, apart from all the negative effects that we have heard of Corona. This is a golden opportunity for you guys to do distance learning and to do something that you always wanted to do but probably didn't get a chance. This is almost my last slide, because in the end, I'm just going to end with a very, very short story. I think the most important thing for me was, you have to find your passion. I always sometimes still get that little voice in my head that I had, when I was jumping off the boat, that you probably cannot do this. But then it comes back to the point that it wasn't that scary then. It's not going to be as scary now. I have learned one thing, especially in the US, and I think this applies everywhere. You only get what you ask for. If you do not ask or share your career aspirations with people, they will not know, and then they will not help you. You always have to ask for more. If you know that you can work 110%, you should not stop at 100. You should always push yourself for that extra 10%. So please lean in, please ask. Please tell people, be vocal, that this is what I want to achieve, this is what I want to do, how can you help me? Only then they will know. They are not in your head. So you have to be vocal about things. The one thing, again, I kept mentioning on and on was, build your own brand. Find that one niche. I found my niche that, I can negotiate with people. I can convince them through my communication skills. And that's what I have been using up until now. So really find your niche, find your strength, and really, really work on that strength. You will automatically start seeing that your weaknesses are going to decrease. Passion is very important. I found my passion by working in cancer. Like I mentioned, after 8 years, I did not get it in the first shot, but I also did not give up. I wanted to be disruptive. I wanted to think outside the box. A lot of people, when I was interviewing for my cancer regulatory affairs position, told me, you have never done this before. How can we trust you to do the job? That's when I thought outside the box, that things that people are seeing as a weakness on my resume, that I have done so many things but not cancer, I'm going to use that as my advantage and tell them, because I have the capacity to do so many things, this is not going to be difficult for me as well. So really think outside the box. And I definitely truly believe in this quote. Again, might sound philosophical to you, but trust me, your competitors can copy your work because everyone is doing and studying the same programs, but no one can copy your passion because your passion comes from within you. So find your passion, be whatever it is, and it will take time. Trust me, there are only a very, very few lucky people in the world who find their passion straight off. It took me time to find my passion, but I am extremely happy that I found it. It will take time, but do not give up. Please continue looking for your passion. I want to end by, just giving you tidbits of things that worked for me and things that challenged me. And I hope that you guys may learn a little bit out of it. For me, the thing that worked was taking a risk. I did take a risk, leaving my family, leaving the comforts of my home, coming to the US, and my first 1.5 years were pure struggle. I was homesick. I did not eat properly. I was stressed all the time because I wanted to perform better, but it all is in good stride. You are going to feel so much better about yourself when you look back and realize how far you have come. So taking risk, and it wouldn't matter whether you're coming to the US, whether you're even staying in India and you're still taking a risk to do something different. Taking a risk may mean different for different people. Please take a risk. Second, you cannot replace this hard work. Hard work is the key to everything. Whatever I have accomplished, and trust me, I still have a lot to accomplish, I can only dedicate it to the hard work that I have. Do you remember the first time I mentioned that, when I was applying for my internship, and that was my first internship at GSK, I did not have any job experience, right? Because I just graduated pharmacy school. I think I would have probably sent in 700 applications, and I'm not exaggerating. I have cried, I have been in pain, sweat, tears, everything, but I have not stopped. And I think only because of that, I got that one chance for my internship, and that was my break into the industry. So do not stop, because it's all in your head. All those fears are in your head. Networking is extremely important, and I do want to focus a little bit on networking. Is that LinkedIn has become such a big part of our world right now. I do feel that networking is important, but smart networking is important. Sometimes I get messages on LinkedIn where people just randomly send me a connection because either we have mutual friends or, they are from the same background that I am. But the other person doesn't know you. And remember, this is not Facebook, this is not Instagram, this is a professional platform. So when you are sending someone a request to network, introduce yourself. Put a purpose behind why you chose to network with that person, why you want to build a connection with that person. I often see people, from different areas just sending a standard message, "Hi, I would like to connect." But that doesn't give me any insight about who you are, what you want to achieve, how can I help you, whether you and I even have any goals in common. So please, when you're networking, please remember. And I'm telling you this out of my personal experience. I have done that to people, and then you say, "Oh, people are ghosting me, no one is responding." Please put a purpose behind why you are networking with that person and how that person can help you. Also, the other thing I have realized is people, again, when you're already here, or maybe you're trying to find a job elsewhere, don't just tell them, "Hi, I'm looking for a job." That's not how you build a network. That's not how you build a connection. You have to first seek their advice. You have to make sure that you are getting mentored by that person. And then you ask them what you really desire or require. Don't be selfish. Just don't tell them that, "Hey, I need a job. You know why? That's why I want to network with you." No, you want more than a job. You want to understand where they came from, how they started. So try to be a mentee. A good mentee always learns, trust me. The other most important thing is, which I never knew until I came to the US, is something called as a Toastmasters International. Toastmasters is a platform that will help you improve your public speaking for a very, very, very minimal price. I think it might almost be free. So when I joined GSK, and when I knew that my branding could be through my communication skills, I wanted to improve it, and I joined GSK Toastmasters as a US-based chapter. I found out online that there is a Mumbai Toastmasters International, and I'm sure they are doing their Toastmasters program online. So what Toastmasters really is, very in a nutshell, that you have a group of people, and it's a completely safe space to improve your writing as well as speaking qualities. You have to give 10 speeches. So you have to write the speech on your own, and you have to say the speech by yourself. What those other people within the group will do is they will count how many times you used filler words, how many times you said, okay. So what that does is that it helps you realize that filler words will make your audience's attention be lost in a second. So it really helps you improve on your communication skills, and be anywhere in any field. Communication is extremely important. So I would really very, very strongly recommend everyone to join Toastmasters International. Give your 10 speeches, get feedback from others, and you will see that your confidence has really been elevated by it. It helped me tremendously, and it is still helping me in my job. So definitely recommend that. Some things that really challenged me was, like I mentioned, not having working experience for my first job. When I was moving into the industry, I got a lot of backlash on, you don't have any experience, all you did was study in school, and that did challenge me. So any kind of work experience that you can get in between now and what you're planning to do in future is great. It can be anywhere, but any sort of work experience is amazing. Immigration struggles, I know I have touched on this a little bit. They are challenging, they are beyond anyone's controls. But if you decide to come to the US, please be very much prepared for immigration struggles. Right from getting your OPT after your student visa to convincing a sponsor to file an H-1B for you. H-1B is, again, remember, lottery. So it's luck if your name gets picked up. Yay. Otherwise, you have to figure out other options. Even after H-1B, it's a huge daunting task to renew it every time. If you're changing jobs, that's another issue. So immigration struggles in the US are real. I am not trying to demotivate anyone. I think that US has given me tremendous opportunities, but we should all be prepared of the struggles that are associated with those opportunities. And the last is fear. When I say fear, I want to end it with a story. So, this was an experiment that was conducted by a marine biologist, and it's called the shark and bait experiment. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. They built this cage that you see the two marine biologists inside the cage, and they had a fish bait in their hand, a dead fish for the shark. The shark was kept hungry, so the shark was starving. So as soon as the shark smelled the fish bait, it came rushing through the gate, and as soon as it came in, it slammed through that cage door because the cage was completely locked. It went back and it slammed again. That was the second attempt. Every passing attempt, the fish kind of started becoming less aggressive. This experiment was conducted over a period of, I think, 6 or 8 weeks. And the same thing kept happening. The shark came in with all aggression. And then eventually, by the end of 8 weeks, they removed the cage. But as soon as the shark smelled the fish bait, because it was voluntarily thinking that there is a cage there that is going to slam into that cage again, the shark didn't even try to go and catch the fish. That's what I want to tell everyone, that it's all in your head. If you think that you have failed 5 times, 6 times, do not stop trying, because that fear is in your head. If you stop trying, you will never achieve what you want. And I can truly tell this from my personal experience. I'm still trying to grow in my career. I still try every day to learn new things. And it's hard. It bogs me down. It takes a lot of energy from me. But I still want to keep trying, because when I did that in the past, I know I got some very successful results. So please, it's all in your mind. It really is not as scary as it looks. That was the end of my presentation. Thank you so much, everyone, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Bhargavi. That was a very nice, candid sharing of experience.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so the question is, including yourself, there are many such examples of your peers, your juniors, and your seniors who have done exceptionally well in the US. Mm-hmm. What is it that stops them from doing well here?
That's a great question. And, honestly, Tabassum ma'am, that's one thing that I and my husband, who is also a PhD, he's also an oncologist, we keep discussing. I feel that, and this is not a challenge just with India. I think this is a challenge in general with developing countries. With developing countries, the amount of economic resources right now for research and for innovation are limited to a certain extent, because that's a challenge that every developing country faces. You know, it needs to have its primary motives set first, that everyone should have basic food, clothing, shelter. So that's where I think in terms of innovation, there is a hard stop for us. That yes, like I mentioned, India is leading right now in terms of generics, because generics does not require that amount of dollars, that amount of resources that a US or a Europe or a Canada that are already developed can invest. So India is leading in certain ways, and of course that's where I keep saying that people who are interested in generics, people who are interested in that side of the sector, should absolutely get some experience in India before they come here, because the experience here is limited for those things. So that's where you create your niche. But for me, because I found my passion to be in oncology, and the oncology sector requires a lot more investment of dollars, a lot more investment in terms of resources. I think India will be there at some point, but it's not there right now. And whenever that point comes, trust me, I will love to come back and use all that knowledge for my country.
Okay. So anyone has any question, any query to ask?
You can even ask me, like, you know, how much I cried. I would even tell you that. Anything you want to ask, trust me, I am very, very much open to answering any question. You can even ask about my personal life.
So an interesting point which I appreciated what Bhargavi made was how you connect on LinkedIn with professionals, okay? Because that actually sets the foundation of maybe a long-term or at least a short-term relationship. So the way you start makes sense, and most of the people, as she said, hi. So that is the way with people connect. So I think that's a very important learning. In fact, that gives me an idea that I can probably arrange a session for professional, making professional connects. Because I don't know, I mean, maybe students, if they connect properly, because I receive so many LinkedIn messages from all those students who are part of IPA MSV. Okay, and I don't know who they are, and I don't care actually. So I am not able to understand why they want to link with me. So I'm totally lost.
Exactly. And that's where you see, like, most of the people might just ghost you, because you know what? You're not giving them enough information for them to let you into their lives. So you have to be very mindful that you're not connecting with a friend on Facebook. But this is, like Tabassum ma'am mentioned, probably a long-term relationship. That person might eventually become your mentor at some point.
Yes, that's true. Yes, do we have any questions? Anish?
I hope I didn't bore the students too much.
No, I don't think so. I think they could probably connect better. I could connect. So a lot of it probably I've already passed all this thing, but I'm sure they have connected. And anyone, anytime you have a doubt, just ask me. I can probably connect you to Bhargavi.
Yeah, absolutely.
Depending on what it is, right? So I have all her details with me. So,
yeah, I can also share my personal email address with you, Tabassum ma'am. And that
yes.
way, if anyone has any question, I'm always open. People who are coming to the US, if you face any challenges, and if I've experienced that, I can absolutely help you with that as well. So always open to helping you guys.
Okay. Okay, so then in case if you don't have any questions, I will end the meeting, and thank you, Bhargavi, for a wonderful interaction.
Yeah,
And
it was a wonderful lecture.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vasanti ma'am and Tabassum ma'am. You know, I feel so honored when Tabassum ma'am reached out to me. It didn't even take me 1 second to say yes, because it's truly an honor to come back to my alma mater where it all started. I still remember sitting on those benches and thinking about what am I going to do with my life?
so the reason we had final year and third year students was the uncertainties, the bright or bleak future. As of now, you're not aware, but it is probably going to lead you the way Bhargavi has gone, the way where all of us have been there, right? So we are here. So one of you may fall in one of these slots or emerge in a new slot, create for yourself. So that's precisely why I have decided that I'm going to call young people, because they connect better. if they are from our college, they connect even more better.
Yes, exactly.
Because, so that being the case, so that's how I thought I'm not going to call senior people for this unless there is a very striking topic to be shared. Otherwise, we are going to have a young group of people so that the students can connect better.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be the world of the millennials and the Gen Zs coming up. So, we actually can teach a lot to our seniors as well, especially in terms of technology. That can be your niche. Yeah, absolutely. I think this was a great, great idea. I'm so glad that I could share my experience.
Okay, thank you, students. And I hope there was some kind of takeaway from this, because that's what is important, right? So everyone must have taken different points, different pointers. But at the end of the day, if there's something which has helped you understand better, I think it served the purpose.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Thanks.
students. And thank you, teachers.
Thank you,
You too.
Bhargavi.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.